When life presents an opportunity and your gut tells you to go for it, listen, leap, and just do it. I cannot imagine a better example of this than my next guest, Dr. Sonat Birnecker Hart, a woman who not only runs one of the largest independent and female-owned craft distilleries in the US, but pursued this path after spending a decade as a professor in both the United States and Germany. In 2020, her determination proved yet again to be indispensable as she pivoted KOVAL from gin and whiskey to manufacturing hand sanitizer during the COVID pandemic. Sonat's story is proof that when you put yourself in a driver's seat and you put fear in your rear view mirror, anything is possible. And you are capable. Sonat, so we are sitting in the KOVAL Distillery store.
Yes.
Walking into this space, I couldn't believe I was in Chicago. Let's start with the background of KOVAL.
Well, KOVAL started in 2008. My husband and I were living in DC. We had different lives. I was a professor. He was the deputy press secretary for the Austrian embassy. We decided, because I was pregnant with our first child, that we wanted to sort of find a home. So we went house hunting, could not find anything. This was, of course, right before the crash that was in 2008. And after leaving one too many that needed a little too much love.
The TLC
yeah,
effect.
Exactly. Yeah, that we thought, okay, maybe we don't want to buy a home here. Maybe there are other things that we want more. So we wanted to work together. We wanted to live in a city we love, which is Chicago. We wanted to be able to be close to family. And we wanted to be able to have our kids close at hand. And that was certainly important to me.
Yeah.
And you can't really do that unless you have your own business. And so we decided, all right, let's start a family business. Let's move to Chicago. And that's how sort of the idea for KOVAL came about. So we took the money that was going to be for a down payment on a home and invested it in a still. And started KOVAL.
From my understanding and from just reading about both you and your husband, what was your background? Let's talk about that, because you weren't in the distillery business. Like,
Right.
Whiskey and gin making wasn't in your background.
No, I mean, I would appreciate it from time to time, but from a professional standpoint, no. So my husband grew up distilling, so It was chores for him. He didn't go into that either. He became a PhD and went on to work for the Austrian embassy. For me, my background was in cultural history. I taught at Humboldt-Universität in Berlin and many universities in the Baltimore, DC area. But at the end of the day, I feel that life has many chapters. You're not limited.
That is true.
And just because you've spent a long time preparing for one chapter and then engaging in that chapter 100% doesn't mean that you can't turn on a dime and do something completely different. So that's sort of what happened.
Here we are.
Yes.
So I read the last distillery that was opened in Chicago was in the 1800s.
Yes. Chicago was a distribution town, not necessarily a manufacturing town for alcohol. I mean, I'm sure there was plenty of people making alcohol, but illegally. So
Al Capone days.
Right, yeah. So when we're talking about what was really legit in the books, it wasn't, since the mid-1800s. And so when we started KOVAL, that presented a number of problems, which is that the laws hadn't been adjusted since Prohibition ended. And so in order to have actually a space exactly like this, in order to have a retail component to a manufacturer of distilled spirits, I had to get the laws changed.
And how long did that take you to get from that point to where you are at today?
So in the beginning, it was just me and Robert, and we had like one child in a pack and play, and now I've got a teenager and another child as well. With regard to the business itself, our footprint has gotten much larger, but also our team has gotten much larger. Now we're about 30 full-time people people, and not just in the United States, but also abroad. We work with people in Europe. We've got a full-time market manager in Tokyo. And we've, gone from just selling in Chicago to now selling across the country and in 55 export markets. So there's been a lot of changes over time.
One of the most impressive, on top of everything that walking in here and seeing that, is this is one of the largest women-owned distilleries.
At the end of the day, it sounds amazing that it's a woman-owned distillery, but I like to also remind everybody that it's really a part of what this industry has been from its very inception. So women have been in distilling from ancient times. In fact, the first still was created by a woman. And her name was Maria the Jewess in ancient Egypt, and she created a still and distillation so that she could do tinctures and probably for medicinal purposes. And I would say that throughout history, women have been very much a part of brewing and distilling, and it was often thought of actually as women's work. And it's really only in the modern day that it's gotten this sort of, idea that it's very male dominated.
Yeah.
And I would say, even in my experience as a woman in this industry, I work with women all over the world in this industry. Even when you're talking about consumption and purchasing, women buy about half of all the whiskey.
So where do you see this industry going in the future with women?
I feel as if women have really driven things forward on a lot of levels, in part because they've become a very vocal consumer, a very recognized consumer. And so from that level, you've got the very large liquor companies looking at that and saying, wow, okay, we need to take notice, and they're supporting and are more interested in female-owned brands and also marketing specifically to women. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. But I think that in general, this business is really a people business. It's about enjoyment, it's about celebration. And I think wherever the celebration is where, the minds are going to be. And I think we saw that during the pandemic very clearly, in that the traditional ways of purchasing alcohol completely changed.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw a rise in online purchasing, in delivery of alcohol. These were all real pivots from the way things were done before.
And speaking of how the pandemic really changed so much, you pivoted during 2020. Your distillery pivoted, went from making gin and whiskey to hand sanitizer.
Yes.
And how you helped so many people. I want to hear more about that.
We were in the right place at the right time, and decided to do the right thing, and we couldn't have done it alone. I mean, this was my entire team was devoted to doing this, and we went into a completely different mode of work. We had decided to at first just make a few batches of hand sanitizer. This was very early on. We were also involved in trying to get the laws changed so that we could make hand sanitizer, because it was actually illegal for a distillery of alcohol for consumption to make alcohol for anything else.
Really?
And so at the onset of the pandemic, there needed to be some legislative changes made. But what we recognized very early on is that 2 batches were not going to be enough. And so we shifted all of our production to making hand sanitizer, and we did for about 5 months. We donated thousands and thousands of gallons to area hospitals, to ambulance companies, and so many others on the front line. We started then fielding hundreds of phone calls a day from people needing it, and not just those on the front lines, but businesses. We also started working with others in the beverage community in Chicago, so like Metropolitan Brewing Company, all of the breweries up and down this road, which is Malt Row, donated their beer. Temperance of Evanston, Goose Island.
This is what this city is about, and this is why the city is so great, and how Chicago, despite everything else that's going on, how the community comes together.
Right. And I think another unique part of Chicago is that it's the city works with you too. I mean, they
Yeah.
call it Chicago the city that works, but I really actually believe that. Chicago really has made an effort on every level to try and help, you know, my small business, and I know a lot of others, but, you know, it was a new endeavor. You know, there hadn't been a distillery, you know, as we know in Chicago, and they really worked with us to figure out, you know, what's going to make it safe. What's going to make it successful? You know, what do you need from us in the city? It was really amazing and heartening to be able to feel as if, you know, they're a partner as opposed to, you know, an entity that you're nervous about and that you think is going to hinder your progress or success.
You've accomplished so much in such a small amount of time. I know it seems like forever, but what you've accomplished and what you've done here and what you've built here, where do you see KOVAL going in the future?
You know, the journey's the goal.
Yeah.
So every day is my goal, is to just accomplish a great day and then see where that gets me, you know, because I think with that mindset, you're always going somewhere, and it's a very rewarding way to sort of see the process as you're moving through time. I mean, obviously we're in a number of export markets and we want to grow those markets. We want to, you know, grow the company, put more people in some of these markets so that they can help us grow on the ground. And then now the bar, so people can enjoy the patio and have a cocktail.
I cannot wait. That bar is so beautiful. Like, just the whole bar itself is so beautiful, and just the sofas in there, it just really does feel so, it feels like Chicago. It feels like Chicago. Sonat, thank you so much for sitting down with us and telling us, you know, and everyone watching this, your inspiring story, because I know you've inspired me, and women can do anything, and if you put your mind to it and you're passionate about it, you can build anything as long as you're consistent and you remain committed, that anything can happen. For more inspiring stories like this, head to my website at rstack.com or connect with me through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube.